My father suspended me until I apologized to my sister. I just said, all right. The next morning, she smirked until she saw my empty desk and resignation letter. The company lawyer ran in pale. Tell me you didn't post it. My father's smile died on the spot. 2 weeks without pay until you apologize to your sister for undermining her authority. My father's voice echoed in the conference room. Board members shifted in their seats. My sister Elena sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, victory already painted across her face. Everyone waited for me to argue, to defend myself, to make this the explosive confrontation Dad had clearly prepared for with his speech about family loyalty and respecting the chain of command. All right, I said simply. The room went silent. Dad blinked, looked almost disappointed that I wasn't fighting. He'd built up to this moment, written out talking points, rehearsed his authority, prepared to shut down my objections one by one. I'd just stolen his thunder with 2 words. That's it? Elena couldn't hide her surprise. You're just accepting this? You want me suspended? I'm suspended. You want an apology? You'll get one. I gathered my notebook and laptop. Can I go clean out my desk now? The question hung in the air. Professional, calm, completely unexpected. Dad's face went red. Marcus, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm following your instructions. You suspended me. I'm leaving. Unless there's something else? There wasn't. I walked out of that conference room at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. 6 years of my professional life about to fit into cardboard boxes, and I had absolutely no intention of coming back. I'm Marcus Chen, 34 years old, VP of Operations at Chen Manufacturing, my father's company. For 6 years, I'd been the one actually running things while my sister Elena coasted on the family name and Dad's unwavering belief that she could do no wrong. The company manufactured custom industrial parts, precision machining, complex orders, tight tolerances, the kind of work that requires realistic timelines and honest communication with clients. Elena ran sales, which meant she spent her days making promises to clients without ever consulting the people who'd have to deliver on those promises. It had been a pattern for years. She'd promise impossible timelines. I'd scramble to make it work. She'd take credit for landing the deal. I'd eat the overtime costs and exhausted production teams. Dad always backed her up. Elena has good instincts. She knows how to close deals. Sometimes you have to push the team to exceed their limits. Never mind that exceeding limits meant my machinists working 70-hour weeks. Never mind the rush fees. Never mind the quality issues that cropped up when we tried to compress 8 weeks of work into 3. The Patterson account last year nearly killed us. Elena promised custom components in 4 weeks. Actual timeline? 12 weeks minimum. We made it in 11, but only because I personally covered $47,000 in overtime costs that went over budget. Only because my production manager almost quit from stress. Only because I called in every favor I had with our suppliers. The client was happy. Elena got a bonus. I got told I needed to be more flexible with timelines. That was the moment I started documenting everything. Every email, every warning, every time Elena overpromised and I had to fix it. I told myself it was just good business practice. Keep records. Cover your ass. Standard corporate survival. But deep down, I knew. Someday, this was going to explode. And when it did, I wanted proof. The explosion came last Tuesday. Elena closed a deal with Henderson Industries. Major account, 6-figure contract. Great for the company. Except she'd promised 10,000 custom units in 3 weeks. I found out when Henderson's procurement manager emailed me directly asking about production schedules. My stomach dropped when I saw the timeline. 10,000 units, 3 weeks. Custom specs that required specialty tooling we'd need to order. I ran the numbers twice, checked with my production manager, consulted our lead engineer. Absolute best case scenario, 8 weeks. Realistically, 10 weeks. There was no universe where we could deliver in 3 weeks without completely fabricating the laws of physics. I called Elena at 2:17 p.m. Hey, I just got the Henderson specs. We need to talk about the timeline. It's already approved. I sent the contract this morning. Elena, we can't deliver 10,000 units in 3 weeks. That's physically impossible. You always say that. Then you figure it out. That's your job. My job is to run operations based on reality, not based on whatever timeline you pulled out of thin air to close the deal. Don't start with me, Marcus. Dad already approved the contract. Did you tell Dad the actual production timeline? I told him what the client needed. He said to make it work. That's not how manufacturing works. She hung up on me. I sat at my desk for 11 minutes, staring at the Henderson specs, doing the math over and over, hoping I'd missed something. I hadn't. We were going to breach this contract. Henderson would sue. We'd lose the account and probably end up in arbitration, unless someone told them the truth before it was too late. At 3:34 p.m., I drafted an email to Henderson's procurement manager. Professional, factual, no drama. Subject, Henderson Industries order, production timeline. Clarification. Mr. Stevens, thank you for the Henderson order specifications. After reviewing your requirements with our production team, I need to provide a timeline clarification. The order calls for 10,000 custom units with specialty tooling. Our realistic production timeline for this volume is 8 to 10 weeks, not the 3 weeks indicated in the preliminary agreement. I want to ensure we set accurate expectations to deliver quality work and maintain our partnership. I'm available to discuss discuss modified timelines or phased delivery options that would meet your needs while ensuring our quality standards. Best regards, Marcus Chen, VP of Operations, Chen Manufacturing. I CC'd my father and Elena. Professional courtesy, full transparency. Hit send at 3:41 p.m. Elena stormed into my office at 4:23 p.m. What the fuck did you just do? I corrected an unrealistic timeline before it became a breach of contract. You undermined me. You made me look incompetent in front of a major client. You made yourself look incompetent by promising something we can't deliver. I'm trying to prevent a lawsuit. You're trying to sabotage me because you're jealous that I close deals and you just make excuses. I make reality work, Elena. There's a difference. She stormed out, slammed my door hard enough that people in adjacent offices looked up. I went back to work. Figured Dad would call me later. We'd have a conversation. I'd explain the production constraints. He'd be frustrated but ultimately understand. That's not what happened. The board meeting was called for Wednesday at 9 a.m. Emergency session. All board members required to attend. I walked in at 8:57 a.m. with my laptop and production reports, ready to explain the Henderson situation with data. Dad was already seated at the head of the table. Elena sat to his right. The 5 board members, 3 external investors, our CFO Richard Morrison, and our company attorney Janet Park filled the other seats. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Marcus, sit down, Dad said. No greeting, no small talk. I sat. Elena has brought serious concerns about your conduct yesterday, specifically that you deliberately undermined her authority and damaged our client relationship. I sent an email correcting an unrealistic timeline. You contradicted your sister's agreement with a major client. You made her look incompetent. You violated chain of command. Chain of command doesn't override operational reality, Dad. We cannot deliver 10,000 custom units in 3 weeks. It's physically impossible. If we don't correct that expectation now, we'll breach the contract and face legal consequences. Richard, the CFO, cleared his throat. Marcus is correct about the timeline. I reviewed the specs. 3 weeks is unrealistic. Elena's face went red. You're taking his side. I'm stating operational facts, Richard said calmly. This isn't about sides. Dad held up his hand. The issue isn't the timeline. The issue is Marcus going around his sister instead of working internally to find a solution. I called her first. She told me to make it work and hung up on me because you were being negative and defeatist instead of problem solving. Janet Park, the attorney, spoke up. For what it's worth, correcting the timeline in writing before contract execution actually protects us legally. If we'd let the client believe the 3-week timeline was viable, we'd have a much bigger problem later. That's not the point, Dad's voice rose. The point is loyalty, family. Marcus deliberately embarrassed his sister to make himself look better. I corrected a factual error to prevent a lawsuit. You undermined her authority. We stared at each other across the conference table. 6 years of this. 6 years of Elena's mistakes becoming my emergency. 6 years of me fixing her chaos while she took credit and I took blame. Something in my chest went cold. The board has made a decision, Dad continued. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay until you apologize to your sister for undermining her authority. The words landed like stones. Elena couldn't quite hide her smile. Richard looked uncomfortable. Janet looked like she wanted to object, but knew better. The external investors said nothing. They were here for returns, not family drama. Everyone waited for me to argue, to defend myself, to make this the confrontation Dad had clearly prepared for. All right, I said. The room went silent. Dad looked disappointed. That's it? You want me suspended? I'm suspended. You want an apology? You'll get one. I closed my laptop. Can I go clean out my desk now? Marcus, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm following your instructions. You suspended me. I'm leaving. Unless there's something else? Nobody said anything. I stood up, walked out at 9:23 a.m. Behind me, I heard Elena say, well, that was easier than I expected. She had no idea. I spent that afternoon packing 6 years of my professional life into boxes. Awards for efficiency improvements I'd implemented. Photos of production milestones I'd managed. The plaque from when we'd hit our first $1 million quarter. A quarter Elena took credit for even though I'd restructured our entire workflow to make it possible. Every project I'd saved from her overpromises. Every crisis I'd averted. Every impossible deadline I'd somehow met. All of it going into cardboard boxes from the supply room. My production manager, David Chen, no relation, stopped by at 3:47 p.m. This is bullshit, he said quietly. You know that, right? Yep. What are you going to do? Right now? Pack? After that? I shrugged. Figure it out. He looked at the boxes, at my empty desk. If you land somewhere else, call me. I'm not sticking around if you're gone. Elena's going to run this place into the ground. I'll keep that in mind. He left. 3 other department heads stopped by over the next hour, all saying basically the same thing. This is wrong. You got screwed. We're with you. Nice words, but words don't pay mortgages. By 6:30 p.m., my office was empty. Boxes stacked by the door, walls bare, like I'd never been there. I sat at my desk, the one I'd worked at for 6 years, the one where I'd solved hundreds of problems Elena created, and opened my laptop. Time to burn it all down. I'd been meticulous about documentation for 18 months, ever since the Patterson disaster where Elena's timeline nearly bankrupted us, and I had to personally absorb the costs. Every project had detailed files. Every warning I'd given had a paper trail. Every budget overrun had an analysis showing whose decisions caused it. The Patterson contract, promised in 4 weeks, delivered in 12. I'd saved every email showing Elena's timeline promises and my warnings that they were impossible. Documentation of the $47,000 in overtime I'd covered personally. Screenshots of my production manager's stress-related medical leave. The Morrison account. Elena promised custom features we didn't have equipment to produce. We'd had to subcontract at a massive loss. I had the equipment limitation emails, the cost overrun reports, the client satisfaction surveys showing they were unhappy with the delayed delivery. The Chen Industries disaster. Elena's timeline was so unrealistic, we'd had to refund their deposit and pay a $35,000 contract penalty. I had the original timeline she'd promised, the actual production schedule, and the settlement documents. 6 years of documented chaos. All professional, all factual, all proving that Elena's department was actively damaging the company while I'd been quietly fixing her messes and taking blame for not being flexible enough. I compiled everything into a single folder, organized by project, cross-referenced by type of issue, annotated with production reports and financial impact. Then I wrote an email to all board members, all department heads, Henderson Industries, Patterson Manufacturing, Morrison Industrial Supply, Chen Industries, Bradford Components. Subject: production capacity, documentation, and timeline accuracy. Colleagues and partners. As of today, I am resigning from my position as VP of Operations at Chen Manufacturing, effective immediately. Per my employment contract, suspension without documented cause or due process triggers my severance package, immediate vesting of stock options, and separation terms outlined in Section 7.3 of my agreement. In the interest of transparency and professional integrity, I'm sharing documentation of production capacity constraints and timeline accuracy issues that have affected multiple projects over the past 6 years. This information may be relevant to current and future partnerships. Attached, you will find comprehensive project files, including email chains showing timeline promises versus to actual production capabilities, budget analyses detailing cost overruns from unrealistic scheduling, production reports demonstrating equipment and capacity limitations, client satisfaction data from delayed deliveries, documentation of systemic issues affecting operational efficiency. I've appreciated working with many of you and wish Chen Manufacturing success in addressing these operational challenges. The best regards, Marcus Chen. I attached everything, every spreadsheet, every email chain, every budget report, every piece of evidence showing that Elena had been systematically overpromising for years while I cleaned up the wreckage. My finger hovered over send. This would burn every bridge, destroy my relationship with my father, guarantee I'd never speak to Elena again. But I'd tried the professional route, the internal route, the respect the chain of command route, and it got me suspended for telling the truth. I pressed send at 7:43 p.m. Then I opened a second email to a headhunter I'd spoken with 4 months ago about a position at Velocity Manufacturing, our biggest competitor. Subject: ready to discuss opportunity. Jennifer, remember that COO position we discussed in July? I'm ready to talk specifics. I can start immediately. Best. Marcus. She responded in 11 minutes. Can you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I slept better that night than I had in 6 years. I arrived at Chen Manufacturing at 8:47 a.m. Thursday to collect my remaining personal items and submit official resignation paperwork. The office was chaos. Assistants huddling in corners, department heads in urgent conferences, people speed-walking between offices with worried expressions. I headed to my office, former office, with my resignation documents. Elena was sitting at my old desk, going through the drawers I'd already emptied. She looked up when I appeared, satisfaction written across her face. Enjoy your 2 weeks off, she said, smirking. Maybe you'll learn some humility. Then she actually looked at the office. The bare walls, empty shelves, no personal items anywhere. Her smile faltered. That's when Richard Morrison, our CFO and general counsel, came running down the hallway. Phone in one hand, tablet in the other, face absolutely pale. Tell me you didn't post it. He was breathless, looking directly at me. Tell me you didn't send that documentation to clients. I held up the portfolio containing my official resignation paperwork. Already done. I'm just here to make it formal. My father appeared behind Richard. He'd been smiling when he walked up, probably thinking he'd won, that he'd put me in my place, that I'd come crawling back apologetic. The smile died instantly when he saw my empty office and Richard's expression. What documentation? Dad demanded. Every overpromise Elena's made for 6 years, Richard said, voice tight. Every email where Marcus warned about production capacity, every budget overrun from rush jobs, every client complaint we settled, every systematic operational failure. He sent it to everyone, board members, department heads, and clients, including the clients currently under contract. Dad's face went white. You can't? I already did. I kept my voice calm, professional, and I quit. The severance paperwork is in this portfolio, along with my stock option transfers and final accounting. Everything's by the book. Per my contract, suspension without cause triggers immediate severance terms. This is blackmail. Elena stood up so fast my old chair rolled backward and hit the wall. It's documentation, Richard said quietly, his lawyer voice, the one that meant we had a serious problem. Unfortunately, it's all factual, and per his employment contract, he had legal right to share internal project files upon departure for purposes of professional integrity and industry transparency. I'd had Richard write that clause into my contract 3 years ago. At the time, Dad had waved it off as unnecessary legal language. Turns out it wasn't unnecessary at all. Dad turned to me, anger replacing shock. You're trying to destroy what I built. No, Dad, I'm refusing to keep covering for someone who's been destroying it for years while I took the blame. There's a difference. The Patterson account is already calling, Richard said, looking at his tablet. They want to know why the timeline Elena promised them differed from the production reports Marcus sent. They're asking if we lied about our capabilities. My phone buzzed. I silenced it. It buzzed again and again. Good luck with that, I said. Also, the Henderson contract Elena just signed? She promised delivery in 3 weeks. Actual timeline is 10 weeks minimum. They're going to figure that out pretty soon when you miss the first milestone. Richard's face somehow went paler. Jesus Christ, Elena. Elena was shaking now, face red. You vindictive piece of... I documented reality. If reality is damaging to you, maybe that's something to reflect on. Janet Park appeared behind Dad and Richard, our attorney. She looked at me, at my empty office, at the resignation portfolio in my hands. Did you consult counsel before sending that email? Didn't need to. I followed my contract terms exactly. Everything I sent was factual documentation of operational issues. No lies, no embellishment, just emails, budgets, and production reports. She looked at Richard. Can we sue him? For what? Telling the truth? Richard shook his head. His contract explicitly permits sharing operational documentation upon departure. We approved that language 3 years ago. Dad's face was turning purple now. Marcus, you listen to me. No, Dad, I'm done listening. I tried the professional route. I tried the internal route. I tried respecting your authority and Elena's feelings, and you suspended me for it. So now I'm doing what I should have done years ago, walking away and letting everyone see exactly what I've been protecting you from. I placed the resignation portfolio on the desk. Everything's in here. Stock transfer paperwork, severance calculation per contract section 7.3, final project handoff notes. Although good luck finding anyone who can actually manage production at the level I was working at. I walked toward the door, stopped, looked back at Elena. By the way, the Henderson account is going to ask for documentation on that 3-week timeline. You might want to prepare an actual explanation instead of just blaming me for being negative. Then I looked at Dad. You built something great. You just destroyed it by valuing loyalty over competence. Good luck fixing that. I walked out while they were still processing. My phone rang continuously for the next 4 hours. Clients, board members, former colleagues. I didn't answer most of them. The ones I did answer, I was professional and brief. I've resigned from Chen Manufacturing. For details on operational issues, please review the documentation I sent. I cannot provide additional comment at this time. The meeting with Velocity Manufacturing was at 10 a.m. Jennifer Wu, the headhunter, met me in the lobby. That was quite an email you sent your former employer. You saw it? Half the industry saw it. It's already circulating in professional networks. She smiled. My client is very interested in speaking with you. The interview lasted 2 hours. CEO, COO, CFO, VP of production. They asked about my experience, my management style, my approach to production scheduling and client relationships. We value operational honesty, the CEO said. We've lost too many deals to companies that overpromise and underdeliver. We need someone who'll tell clients the truth, even when it costs us the sale. That's exactly what got me fired. That's exactly why we want to hire you. They made an offer on the spot. COO position. $180,000 base salary, 40% higher than I'd been making at Chen. Performance bonuses, stock options, start date in 2 weeks. I accepted at 12:17 p.m. The fallout at Chen Manufacturing was spectacular. By Friday, 3 clients had put their contracts under review. Patterson Manufacturing and Henderson Industries both demanded emergency meetings to clarify timeline discrepancies and operational capabilities. The board called an emergency session for Monday morning, without Elena or my father present, just the external investors and Richard. I heard about all this through David, my former production manager. He texted me regular updates. David, board meeting was brutal. External investors are furious. They're demanding operational audit. David, Elena got demoted. Still has title but no client authority. Dad's trying to protect her but board isn't having it. David, Henderson threatened lawsuit. We might have to buy out the contract. On Tuesday, Chen Manufacturing retained Turner & Associates, an external consulting firm, to conduct a full operational audit. The consultant's preliminary report, which leaked to me through professional networks, was scathing. Systematic failure to align sales promises with production capabilities. Nepotistic management practices that prioritize family relationships over operational accountability. 6-year pattern of cost overruns and client dissatisfaction masked by exceptional efforts from operations leadership who has since departed. 2 weeks after I left, Chen Manufacturing settled settled with Henderson Industries. Bought out the contract for $120,000. Lost the account entirely. Patterson Manufacturing moved their business to Velocity Manufacturing, my new company. I personally managed their onboarding. By month 3, Elena had been moved to a Strategic Initiatives Director position, a meaningless title that kept her on payroll without giving her authority to promise anything to anyone. David left Chen Manufacturing and joined me at Velocity, brought 2 other key production managers with him. By month 6, Chen Manufacturing's revenue was down 35% from when I'd left. They'd lost 4 major accounts. Stock price had dropped 28%. The board forced my father to hire an outside CEO, removed him from day-to-day operations, kept him as chairman but stripped most of his authority. He called me once during this period. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Marcus, we need to talk. The company's in trouble. Call me back." I didn't. A year after I left, my father showed up at my house unannounced on a Saturday morning at 9:23 a.m. I opened the door. He looked older, smaller somehow. The confidence that had always defined him was gone. "Can I come in?" I stood aside. Let him in. We sat in my living room. Awkward silence. "The company's struggling," he said finally. "We lost another major account last month. Morrison Industrial. They went to Velocity, your company. I'm aware. I'm managing their account." He flinched. "Revenue is down 42% from when you left. The board hired an outside CEO. They're talking about selling." "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" He looked at me directly. "You destroyed everything I built." "No, Dad. I documented what was already happening. You destroyed it by choosing Elena's ego over operational reality. I just stopped covering for it. She made mistakes. She made the same mistakes repeatedly for 6 years, and you enabled her every time. You promoted her, gave her authority, backed her up when she made promises we couldn't keep, then blamed me when I couldn't magically fix it. She's family. So am I." The words hung in the air. "You suspended me for telling the truth," I continued. "You chose her side without even looking at the facts. You valued her feelings over the company's survival. That's on you." He was quiet for a long time. "I came to ask if you'd consider coming back as COO, full authority over operations. Elena's already been moved to a non-operational role." "No." His face fell. "Just like that? I have a position I love, working with people who respect my expertise and value operational honesty. Why would I go back to proving my worth to people who've already decided I don't have any? Because it's family. Family should be where you don't have to prove anything, Dad. You gave Elena unconditional support for years. You never gave that to me. You made me earn every bit of respect while she got it automatically. I thought I was being fair to both of you. You thought wrong." He stood up, walked to the door. "Stop. I'm sorry, Marcus. I see that now. I see what I did wrong. I appreciate that. But understanding doesn't undo 6 years of damage. Can we try to rebuild something? Not business, just family?" I thought about it. "Maybe. Slowly. On new terms. Not the old dynamic where Elena gets automatic support and I get automatic suspicion." "Fair enough." He left at 10:04 a.m. Elena never reached out. I heard through the family grapevine that she eventually left Chen Manufacturing, moved to Phoenix, started working for some tech startup in sales, still blaming me for everything, according to my cousin. Dad and I speak occasionally now, carefully building something that resembles a relationship. He attended my wedding 8 months ago, gave a toast that acknowledged his failures without making it about him. I thought I was protecting my family by keeping us all together. I learned, too late, that sometimes protecting your family means letting them pursue their own paths, even when it takes them away from you. It's not the relationship I wanted as a child, but it's honest. 5 years after I left Chen Manufacturing, Velocity just surpassed them in annual revenue. We're at $47 million. They're at $41 million and declining. I'm COO. David runs our entire production division. We've built a culture where operational honesty is valued over sales optimism. We promise timelines we can actually deliver. We tell clients the truth even when it costs us deals. We've never had a major breach of contract. Our client satisfaction rate is 94%. Employee retention is 89%. Stock price has grown 140% since I joined. Chen Manufacturing, they sold to a private equity firm last year. Dad's still on the board, but has no operational role. Elena works for a marketing agency in Arizona. The company I helped build for 6 years doesn't really exist anymore. The PE firm gutted it, sold off equipment, laid off half the workforce. Part of me feels sad about that. The other part recognizes that destruction was inevitable. I'd just been delaying it by working 70-hour weeks to fix problems I didn't create. Last week, a young operations manager reached out on LinkedIn. I'm in a similar situation. Family business. Sister in sales making impossible promises. Father backing her up. I keep fixing the problems but getting blamed for being negative. Did you ever regret walking away? I thought about my answer for a while, then wrote back, not for a second. Getting suspended was the best thing that happened to me. It forced me out of a situation where I was undervalued and into opportunities where I could thrive. That empty desk wasn't about revenge. It was about choosing myself, demanding respect instead of begging for approval. My sister thought she'd won when I didn't fight the suspension. But victory isn't about who stays in a broken system. It's about who builds a life they're proud of. Walk away away. Document everything. Let people face what they created without you there to fix it. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish when you stop protecting people from the consequences of their own decisions. He responded 3 days later. I gave my notice this morning. Thank you. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued is simply walking away, not with threats, not with drama, just quiet documentation and a clean exit. Let reality speak for itself. Let people discover what they lost when they chose convenience over competence. My father thought suspending me would teach me a lesson. It did, just not the one he intended. It taught me that respect isn't negotiable, that family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, that sometimes the most professional response is simply saying, all right, and letting your work speak for itself. Elena smirked that morning when she saw me accept the suspension without a fight. She thought she'd won. By the time she realized what I'd done, it was already too late. The documentation was out. The truth was public. The consequences were inevitable, and I was gone, building something better, something honest, something where my work was valued and my integrity wasn't a liability. That's what victory actually looks like. Not staying and fighting in a broken system, but walking away and letting everyone see exactly what they lost.